Welcome, everybody, to today's podcast, A Voice for the Kids with Child USA. And we're talking about justice in Pennsylvania. It's been 16 years. It's been a long haul. It's possible we have some bright light on the horizon. And a major reason for that is that Representative Jim Gregory, who is a survivor himself, is really working hard to try to get something done this year. It's been a year of ups and downs, as we'll talk about. Not an easy lift, but looks like we may well get there. So let me introduce you to Representative Jim Gregory. We'll also be joined by Kathryn Robb, my dear friend and colleague, who is the executive director of Child US Advocacy, and she's working on these issues all over the country. So let me go right to introducing Representative Jim Gregory. Representative Gregory is a Republican who represents Blair County in Pennsylvania's 80th legislative district. He's been there since January of 2019. He serves on the Human Services, Labor, and Industry Committee, the Local Government Committee, and the Tourism and Recreational Development Committee. He is a survivor and an advocate for child sex abuse SOL reform, bravely on the forefront of changing Pennsylvania's laws to give survivors of CSA access to justice. He is a co-sponsor of HB 14, which we'll be talking about today, which is a joint resolution to amend the Pennsylvania Constitution to open a 2-year revival window for survivors of child sex abuse. Before joining the House, he was a legislative aide, a marketing and sales director, but also for 12 years, he was a television sportscaster. So we are very happy to have him today. Kathryn Robb is a lawyer, an advocate, a law instructor, and the executive director of Child US Advocacy. She's a survivor of family abuse, and she's an expert on child sex abuse and advocates for legislation that will protect children from abuse and neglect and support survivors of child sexual abuse. She regularly testifies before legislative committees, presenting the best legal and social science research from Child USA to advocate for laws that will protect all children and promote the common good. She's the co-founder, along with me and Steve Jimenez, of New Yorkers Against Hidden Predators. We had a storied fight for justice in New York. She serves on the board of Massachusetts Citizens for Children, and she's a certified trainer for Mass Kids Enough Abuse campaign. Kathryn received her Juris Doctor from New England Law, and we are delighted to have her here today.
We know that this may be an especially difficult time for survivors. Child USA would like to extend our support by providing free access to our child sex abuse membership portal, a place where survivors can find resources vetted by the experts at Child USA to help them learn, heal, and grow. You can visit childusa.org/members to register for a free trial of the portal with code STRONGERTOGETHER.
So we are absolutely delighted today to have Representative Jim Gregory and Kathryn Robb, who are both survivors and warriors for justice for victims. And we're talking today about this Pennsylvania, as I have come to call it, roller coaster of SOL reform. So let me just start out by saying, this has been an issue in Pennsylvania for 16 years. I think that's a magical number. It took 16 years to get the New York window open. And so we're hoping that that's the magical number this time. So I thought we'd just start out, first of all, I wanted to hear from Kathryn about what's going on across the country right now. It seems like you're testifying every day in some state. And so Pennsylvania is part of a bigger picture.
Most definitely. I mean, this is Pennsylvania is, of course, lagging behind, but this is a tremendous national movement. In the past 4 weeks, I've testified in Colorado twice, Maryland, North Dakota, Georgia. I think I'm missing one in there. So there's lots of activity, whether it's a complete elimination of the statute of limitations, a revival, extension. I think jurisdictions are trying lots of different recipes to protect children and to honor fundamental notions of justice.
So Representative Gregory, you are leading the fight right now in the state of Pennsylvania. Thank you. First of all, how are you feeling about all this? This has been quite the rocking and rolling roller coaster so far.
It sure has been. None of us have been, none of us asked to be put in this position as survivors when we were younger. Or whatever age we might have been. And none of us asked to be put in this position that we find ourselves in right now with the issue that was created by the lack of advertising by the state secretary of the Commonwealth. And I just try to remind myself every day, my faith is really important to me as a survivor, but also someone who lives in long-term recovery. I've worked to be able to understand and accept that certain things are just going to be the way they're going to be, but we can continue to go down the road we're going down because it's the right thing to do. And if we just keep doing the next right thing, everything else seems to take care of itself. And I believe as a unified front that we have today, for the people who follow your lead, that they need to know that we are doing the right thing to get this done and on the ballot for May 18th. And I don't think you told, I told you how I feel. You asked me how I feel.
Yeah.
Man, it's exhausting. I don't know how you've done it for 16 years. I came into this since 2018, and I just came in with the idea that we had a barrier. What can we do about getting over the barrier? You've been fighting for statute of limitation reform. I can't thank you enough for what you've done. And being able to do this together, I gotta believe that this is the right thing to do. And I'm just gonna keep doing the next right thing.
Well, amen. I'm totally with you. But so let's, we'll have listeners from all over the country. Why don't you give us a little description of how the heck we were on this road? Like we were having meetings about, all we have to do is get ready for May 18th. So if you could take us back in time to how is it that we got derailed momentarily and we're now getting back on track?
I don't necessarily think I know the answer to that, but I did send a letter to the governor just a few minutes ago. And I want your followers to know that this letter was not gentle in my demand that 6 weeks ago, this mistake, human error on purpose by mistake, happened, and we still don't know, how it happened. And so, because you've been doing this for 16 years, and probably longer than that, I mean, truly, probably longer than that. And I've said this many times, when you think of the amount of desperation that you've witnessed, both of you, witnessed in attempts to hide and protect predators, for the sake of the shield or for the sake of money, that we would all be naive to at not least ask, is it possible that someone did this to try and continue that desperation? Because desperate people will do desperate things. And I'm not at that point where I don't believe that didn't happen here. I need to be told it didn't happen that way.
So, I think both of us were on the call, not the same call, but Governor Wolf learned that his Secretary of State had somehow not published the constitutional amendment in time. for the constitutional amendment that was to create a 2-year window to be in place. And this was a huge mistake because it meant that we would have to go back for, it would take another 2 years to be able to get it done. It had to be devastating to you, having worked so hard on this. It was devastating to survivors across the state. It certainly was a bummer to us because we had Pennsylvania in the win category, and all of a sudden it was the what do we do category. So, but you jumped up and said, no, wait a minute, let's do this as an emergency constitutional amendment. And we're back on track. But I want to ask Kathryn to talk about who are our opponents on these issues.
Well, across the country, we know very well that our opponents are either the insurance lobby or the Catholic Conference. They fight these bills tooth and nail. There have been way too many times I've seen them in the hallways when we've been allowed to be in the hallways of legislative buildings. And quite simply, they're fighting the bad fight, in my opinion, and they are siding with perpetrators and institutions, and they're covering up to, I would agree with you, Representative Gregory. I think that a lot of this is about money, but a lot of this is also about keeping secret and protecting their image. And I am a firm believer that there's never really a good secret, especially when it comes to children. So that's very dangerous, in my opinion. So that would be my answer. If
I could just add to that, Kathryn, in the rooms, one of the phrases we like to say is that you are as sick as your secrets.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. And that's the tragedy, is that, when the Spotlight story dropped in 2002, I immediately wrote a column in which I said, look, bishops, you've got two choices. You either get on the side of the children, or this is just going to be an ongoing hemorrhaging. This is going to be a disaster for you. And they haven't yet figured it out, sadly. But it's not, it's the bishops with the insurance industry right there. I'm very frustrated with the insurance industry because I think they can be part of the solution. They can be part of prevention. So there are a lot of people to blame, but it does seem like we're in a good place in Pennsylvania to hope for opportunity, I think as early as next week. So Representative Gregory, if you could just explain, so what's supposed to happen next week at this point?
Well, as you know, we passed HB 14 back in January, and that was to start the second session clock, and it was with the Senate, and the day before it was to be voted on. And as you said at the outset, we wouldn't be having this conversation had it not been for the mistake. So now we're into the emergency constitutional amendment, and I believe that what we will see the Senate do, and Chairwoman Lisa Baker for Judiciary in the Senate will run HB 14 through committee, adding an amendment for the emergency constitutional amendment, the language of which will be very important, and we'll be taking a look at that. But once that passes out of committee and goes to the Senate, we need a 2/3 vote, and it is then sent to the House for concurrence and another 2/3 vote. And by Wednesday, if all things would go smoothly, I mean, that's a big if. Yeah, we could be, we will be in that good place that you're talking about. Praying a lot about it, and I hope victims that are watching this, survivors and thrivers like myself, you will have something to cheer and celebrate that we got this far. Then, of course, we have court challenges to consider. And then we have, basically a little bit of time to make sure that the people of Pennsylvania know why this is important for them to support on May 18th.
So this will be there'll be a couple of referenda on the May 18th ballot, assuming everything goes well. Governor Wolf signs it next week. We jump in and the Secretary of State can make up for having, now she's now gone, Kathy Bookvar, but the office can make up for the error and draft a really good referendum language. And then we're hoping that both parties will support the referendum at the polling places. And May 18th is the next time anybody can vote.
Child USA invites you to join us at the 5th Annual Award Celebration on Thursday, November 4th, 2021. The annual award celebration will be hosted live, both virtually and in person, at the Bellevue Hotel in Philadelphia. It will be an inspiring evening to gather with friends, allies, and brave leaders in the field of child protection. Please visit childusa.org/annual-event-2021 to learn more. We hope to see you there.
What is it that we need to explain to the people of Pennsylvania about that May 18th primary? What kind of a primary is it? Obviously, it's not a presidential primary. If you could just, Representative Gregory, just explain what they're going to the polls for.
Well, this election will be very different than our last election that had an 80% turnout. Elections like this tend to, in my county, for example, be in the low to mid 20s, somewhere in the 20s. We could see high 20s typically. But I would like to believe that what folks experienced in the election of last year is how important it is to vote every year. And if you go with that experience, you don't want to miss this one any more than you want to miss any other election. And that this is important for the sake of your communities, for the safety of your children, for the benefit of people who have been waiting for way, way too long, and decades describes it. But the opportunity to get out and vote for local government, municipal government elections is what's going to be most on their minds. Statewide judges races, but then the referendum votes that are out there, including one for the ending of the governor's emergency declaration, which is one that's going to get some attention, but I really want to make sure that people know we have worked really hard to get this to the ballot, and we would really appreciate your support with a yes once we get it there.
So
it seems to me, sorry, Marci, it seems to me that this is really an opportunity for the voters in Pennsylvania to do what many leaders were unable to do for so many years and really stand with children and victims in justice. They really have the opportunity to step up to do this.
I couldn't agree more, Kathryn. And I would say that I believe that sexual abuse has ripple effects. I had them in my own life. And that secondary trauma that is created by what was done to us affects our families and their families, and the ripples never stop. And many of the ills that we are experiencing when it comes to mental health, when it comes to addiction, when it comes to crime, those ripple effects of what occurred to us has created the secondary trauma. And we can also ask people to step up and say, I want to make a difference for that reason also.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 13 boys are sexually abused, according to our best data. That's a big chunk of the population, right? And so for all of those who have not come forward even, this is a chance to empower as many as need to and can come forward. But I really do hope that people understand the public interest that's served here. This is definitely for survivors, and I want to ask Kathryn in a minute how it felt when the window opened in New York and she was capable of filing her own lawsuit. But people need to understand there are teachers, there are coaches in the state of Pennsylvania right now that nobody knows about, because the statute of limitations has kept them protected and the victims silent. When we pass these windows across the country, we find out about dangers to children that nobody knew about. And we find out that this is a problem across the culture. It's not, it's drama. It is, I'm thinking of all the things that kids do at school, sports, it's in school, it's extracurricular. It's by far not just a church. It is everywhere. And we as a society have got to, the only way we can understand it is if we let these survivors come forward and speak. But, you know, Kathryn fought for about a dozen years to get justice for herself and thousands of others. At this point, the state of New York has had over 5,000 cases filed, many involving family, many involving teachers, and just so many categories. Kathryn, how did it feel for you when the Child Victims Act was signed into law?
Well, it felt like the voice of that little girl who was sexually assaulted for 5 years was finally heard. It felt like the people in charge and the leaders finally said, this isn't right, and what happened to you was not your fault, and we owe you better. I think that's really important in terms of healing for survivors. As you know, Representative Gregory, it's a process. It's not, I don't think it's something that survivors ever get over, but it's a process. But to feel validated and heard, and you know, it's very hard for me not to sort of go back to that little girl and feel as if I was able to speak, I was heard, and they finally did the right thing.
You know, Marci, if I may.
Yes,
when I started to go down the road of therapy and to finally have someone tell me that, imagine you're up in the corner of the room, excuse me, my phone's ringing. But imagine you're up in the corner of the room and you're looking down on the act that was perpetrated. What would you do, or what would you say? You would step in and you would pull the little boy away, and that he understood that this was not his fault, that this is, you know, you're not a bad boy, that there's no need to be ashamed or feel guilty. And you need to be able to talk about it. And so I just pulled this out of my desk. I don't know if you can see it.
yeah.
And Kathryn, it's a little piece of shingle that covered the garage that I had my fingers up against, 48 years ago. And we'll never forget what that feels like, but I keep it not so I can feel it and remember what it feels like, but to be able to recognize and help people understand that I understand, and I will never forget. And I'm not going to forget until we get this done.
You know, I think it's so important for the state to be saying to survivors, you matter. So we're going to find a way for you to get justice. And we are tired of letting the perpetrators and the institutions off the hook. I mean, I have to say, what really makes me proud as a resident of Pennsylvania for 37 years, longest place I ever lived in my life. You marry a Philly boy, you go to Philly. I met him at Vanderbilt, if you can imagine, and here I am in Philly. But I am very proud of the fact that in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, this is turning into a bipartisan, nonpartisan issue. So you will have pulled off a miracle, in my view, and a providential miracle that you are a member of the GOP in the House. It is a leader of the GOP in the Senate, Lisa Baker, who's leading that fight. That says a lot. And how do you feel about that?
So it allows me to look at this as if you can look at an issue and not have to look at it as a political party, but just look at it as a person, it makes it very, like, I represent 64,000 people in my district. That's what all the districts add up to. I represent all of them. And if I don't represent all of them, how can I represent all of survivors, no matter what their political affiliation is. You can't look at somebody based on that. And for what our caucus has done with our leadership to recognize the importance of protecting families, I'm very proud of that. But I'm also very proud to be a member of the House of Representatives who, 12 years ago didn't want to live anymore. And to be able to do this and to be able to say to you that I am blessed to have been sexually abused because I can do something with it, probably a miracle by the grace of God. Yeah. Truly. And when I think about just how my leadership has supported me in this effort, I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you.
Marci, yesterday when I testified in the Judiciary Committee in Colorado, one of the things I said, quoting that data, 1 in 5 girls, 1 in 13 boys, we're at about 13% of all children, right? And I said, this affects all children. This is a nonpartisan issue, right? And I just so thank you, Representative Gregory, for really leading the way here and fighting for kids and justice.
Thanks, Kathryn. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that is such a powerful point you're both making, which is that perpetrators aren't looking to see what your political affiliation is. That's just not relevant. It's children, and all of us benefit if our children are healthy and if we understand what's going on with them and how to protect them. I think a lot of people, when the first grand jury report came out of Philadelphia, Rick Santorum, the senator at the time, immediately said, when Spotlight came out, he said, well, that was Boston because they're liberal. And then Lynn Abraham, the DA in Philly, said, I think I'll look into that. And then she did, and the 05 report comes out, and it's a problem in Philly, of all places. This Catholic, when I moved to Philadelphia with my husband 37 years ago, what I understood was you identified yourself by your parish. That's not something we did in Nashville or Dallas or Chicago even, where I had lived before. Everybody, even if you were Jewish, you lived in a parish. And so this was a thoroughly Catholic town, and it turns out there was a problem. But the reason I raise that is because I just hope everybody understands this is about every child in every scenario. It's about the daycare centers and the schools and the coaches. So I hope that we see success next week, but I also hope that everybody understands we then have to fight for the referendum. We need people showing up at the polls. We need people helping to promote it. This won't be done till it's done. So this is going to be a slog, but a worthwhile slog, shall we say.
Trudging the road to happy destiny.
My gloves are always nearby, and I'm happy to put them on and tighten them up for the sake of kids and justice. So always.
Yes.
Well, yes. I want to thank you both for everything you do. This is just, it's moving. And I want to say, let's do it. I'm hoping that we can have success. I'm hoping all those survivors that hear this will understand we're all in there fighting for you. Representative Gregory, thanks for leading the way.
Thank you.
Finding a pathway in a state that looked like, we ranked the states as to feasibility. Pennsylvania was not high on feasibility until you came in the door.
Thank you. Thank you, Marci. Thank you for everything.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
I also want to say you really do have a voice.
Thank you.
We will look forward to fighting it out a little bit longer in Pennsylvania.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Really enjoyed talking to Representative Jim Gregory and Kathryn Robb about the roller coaster of SOL reform, which may well be coming into the station in the next week or so. And, we've been getting questions about various aspects of this SOL reform movement in Pennsylvania. So I wanted to answer a few of those questions real fast. And then I'll let you know how you can get involved in the Pennsylvania push. Everyone always asks, how many victims do you think will file lawsuits in the state? If you base it on every other state at this point, probably 1,500 to 2,000. We've had a banner number in New York, but I think New York is a different scenario. And I do think that we'll have about a couple thousand in Pennsylvania. Some people are worried, well, what if the legal process when the victim files their lawsuit takes longer than the window? So this emergency constitutional amendment lasts 2 years. And sometimes these legal claims can go on, for 5 years. Often not, but they can. And the answer is, the key here is to file your case within that 2-year period. So as soon as the window opens in 2021, fingers crossed it does, you'll have 2 years to be able to file. So you don't have to come forward immediately, but you do want to start looking and talking to lawyers sooner rather than later, because once that window closes in Pennsylvania, that is going to be it for revivals. The issue is that this is a constitutional amendment, and the Pennsylvania constitutional amendment is providing a 2-year window for victims from the past whose claims have expired. It's not providing anything else. So this is when we need to hear from survivors, and survivors really need to come forward. Some people have wondered, so we had this legislation last year, and what it did was it extended the statute of limitations to age 55 prospectively for child sex abuse. And it started this amendment process. Well, and so the question is, does the window affect those under the age of 55? And the answer is absolutely, because anyone whose claim had expired at the time of the extension to age 55, you need that window, even if you're under 55 now. So if your claim had expired because the limit was 20 years at one point or 30 years at one point, and you pass those ages, your claim is expired. So this extension to age 55 really it wasn't retroactive. It doesn't save everybody. You definitely want to jump into the window. So what can you do to be part of getting support from all of the elected representatives in Pennsylvania, and also getting the referendum passed, which would be May 18th? So let me explain what's the mechanism right now. We created a committee called the United Front for PA SOL Reform. And the idea here is that instead of the splintering of groups and individuals, which unfortunately we've had in Pennsylvania for too long, we want everybody to come together and work together, and we want to amplify survivors' voices as much as we possibly can, as well as the advocates. So we would be delighted if you were to sign up for the United Front for PA SOL Reform. You can get there by emailing info@childusadvocacy.org. info@childusadvocacy.org. We're also putting a QR code right up on the screen so that you can just scan that and get there. And so the United Front has been sending emails to members of the legislature. They will be supporting the referendum, getting out the vote, and also we'll be talking about having representatives at the polling places to say, hey, definitely vote in favor of justice for child sex abuse victims. So Thank you so much for listening today. We'd love to have you, if you're not already part of the United Front, to join the United Front. And Kathryn and I are looking to start United Fronts in other states as well. But let's focus on Pennsylvania while we're here. So thanks so much, and we'll see you for the next podcast of Voice for the Kids. Thanks so much.